10,000 species of tree seedlings. We had the teak, Indian teak, we have the pine trees, that is the Caribbean species. We had also...
Trees are something so simple, so part of our everyday landscape. Most would not notice if they were there. But what if they were not there? What could we do to restore a landscape without any trees? Nature, as always, may have the answer. Welcome to Nature Answers, rural stories from a changing planet. We explore stories of how communities in rural sub-Saharan Africa are working with nature to adapt to the climate crisis. I am your host, Martine Mogem, and today we are visiting Morungatuny, a sub-county in eastern Uganda. Are you going with us? Yes, for the people of Morungatuny, trees are vital to economic prosperity, nutrition, and even safety. Yes, of course, safety. Trees are the looming lifelines of our planet, and their roots run deep in rural Uganda. Today, let us take you through stories of optimism, renewal, and profound connection between the people of Morungatuny and the trees they plant. Morungatuny is home to over 20,000 people, all of whom work day in and day out to make ends meet. The area is dry and growing. Anything can be a real challenge. The Ugandan civil war in 2003 has led to a lot of destruction and deforestation. Yes, before there were already a limited number of trees in the area. However, the most profitable business venture in the region is selling firewood. This has led to even fewer trees in the area. Additionally, trees were cut down for charcoal. Charcoal burning, as you can imagine, is not a renewable energy source. Charcoal is produced by cutting down trees and then burning the wood in fiery ovens. Charcoal is essentially pure carbon. Burning it releases carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and pollutants like soot. Charcoal is undisputably bad for the environment, resulting in large amounts of greenhouse gases. It has also been known to cause damage to people's lungs. So, why do people do it? Charcoal remains one of the least expensive energy sources. The need for inexpensive energy for things like cooking is so great in Morungatuny, it has led to almost complete deforestation in the region. Morungatuny is not alone. More than 60% of the world's charcoal is produced in Africa. It would be nice to completely eradicate the use of charcoal, but for many reasons, that is just not a viable or realistic solution. Instead, the people of Morungatuny have had to adapt to their circumstances. This started with local governments enacting bylaws. These severely restrict cutting down trees for the purpose of charcoal burning. If I remember, as recently as May 2023, there was a bill banning tree removal for commercial charcoal production in northern Uganda. The people of Morungatuny are eager to have similar laws put in place for their community. They are seeing the issues caused by the lack of trees firsthand.
The wetlands were drying, the forests were also being cut down. There was really total, even the rainfall pattern extended to the worst. So we started advocating to the communities that it is not good to destroy environment.
That's Jethro, a Morungatuny local we'll hear more from later. More than 15 years ago, the community of Morungatuny began to notice the severe problems resulting from the ongoing deforestation in the region. It is no secret that more trees improve air quality. Air quality is measured in particulate matter, or PM, as it is called by scientists, or let me say scientific. You know, I'm not one of them. And in Uganda, the PM 2.5 concentration is 1.7 times higher than the recommended limit. Uganda's air quality is considered unsafe. This is largely in relation to the ongoing charcoal burning. So firstly, trees aid in air quality, and actively cutting them down for charcoal was worsening air quality. Secondly, food. Food is a necessity to life, and it was becoming scarce. Trees in the region produce actual food like nuts, leaves, and fruits. So clear cutting was eliminating a food source. Additionally, with fewer and fewer trees, there became less to work with in order to prepare food. So, first, air quality. Second, food. Third, shelter. The lack of trees was impacting shelter. There were far less materials to build housing with. One of the most prominent problems, though, was that the more people who sold trees meant more trees were being cut down without replacing or replanting them. Eventually, there will be nothing left. Trees are vital to Morungatuny's economy. Trees are one of the only resources that show an immediate profit. So in addition to all the other problems, the lack of trees meant there was nothing to sell anymore. With nothing left, the community would soon run out of resources to purchase food and shelter. So the lack of trees was not only impacting the necessities for life like air, food, and shelter, but also the economy. And if that was not devastating enough, every member of the community we spoke to about the tree clearing noted a correlation between a lack of trees and an increase in domestic violence. And no one is happy to hear that. This is Tinatwe Maka. She works with Farm Radio International as a gender equality and inclusion officer. Specifically, the work of Tina is to ensure that the nature-based solutions we recommend and share are gender inclusive.
In climate disasters or any kind of changes that are happening because of climate changes, outside of forced migration, is also a dwindling of resources, right? So there's less natural resources to go around. Less natural resources to go around means that women are having a harder time with the management of food, water, and all of the other things that they are responsible for, particularly in this context. So that is existing parallel to the dwindling of resources on more of like a macro level, right? So it's also impacting everyone, and that means it's impacting the economy. And we'll see that in places where climate disasters are high, that again, like economies are growing slower, or there's less work available, or there's less resources to go around, and because of that causes strains and tensions in the home, right?
It is a pattern that has been recorded globally. According to the International Monetary Fund, globally, there's almost always an uptick in domestic violence during periods of economic hardship. Not having basic resources is incredibly frustrating. In many cultures, traditionally, the man is seen as the provider for his family. When it cannot do so, even by no fault of his own, the frustration grows and is unjustly taken out on the woman. The community of Morungatuny also told us that women were responsible for collecting the wood to cook with. And as time went on and there were fewer and fewer trees, the women had to go further and further into neighboring communities to find wood. This predicament meant they were gone for long periods of time, so leaving their husband and children behind. And as women were also considered responsible for childcare, cooking, and other household tasks, this meant those tasks were delayed or spread to men. You cannot imagine that some men even started to believe that their wife may have been unfaithful while they were on these painful long journeys to take care of their families. So this coupled with economic stress resulting in devastating rates of domestic violence. Here's Tina again.
So, of course, this is happening already within a strong foundation of patriarchy and inequality, but those conditions are only worsened within climate. And those tensions within the home, and even, examples like women having to fetch water for longer, travel longer for water, go out of school so that they can go and access water, go out of school so that they can access more food, go out of school because unfortunately they just can't get there, right? That means we also having lower education, and lower education among women and girls can directly be linked to the way that women and girls experience gender-based violence because they have less negotiating power and they have less options about being able to leave. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. So at an individual level, at a community level, and at a bigger economic level, there's just a lot of strains that are everywhere that then lead to increase in domestic violence and gender-based violence.
Obviously, there was a problem, and the people of Morungatuny had to find feasible solutions and adaptations. The first step they took was explaining the situation to the local World Vision office. The local chapter agreed the community needed to do something. They provided seeds for new trees as well as limited educational training on things like how to plant trees and how to cut down trees in a way that allows for some level of restoration. And World Vision hoped the community would then be able to regenerate the trees using seeds from trees that are already there. We met with Jethro, a Morungatuny local who has been involved in creating nature-based solutions from the very beginning.
I'm called Mr. Tol Jethro, an Etesot by tribe, a Ugandan by nationality.
Jethro was born in Morungatuny and spent most of his life there. From a young age, he realized education was a fundamental principle to prosperity. As soon as he was old enough, he left his hometown to pursue an education degree. He wanted to learn so he could teach others. Jethro studied hard and absorbed every ounce of knowledge he possibly could. He had always imagined himself going back to Morungatuny to teach all of the children in the community. After this time away, he did go back to Morungatuny and taught for a while. He noticed school attendance was low, even for a community that already had low attendance rates. Jethro then explored various reasons as to why that may be. He came to the conclusion that it was primarily because of trees, or more accurately, the lack of trees.
For us here in Teso, we rely basically in a crop farming. But if the rain pattern does not promote, it means such a family may have problems if you don't get food, because that food is harvested, part of it is stored for food security, part of it is sold for getting income, money. So you see, I also started advocating people because most of the farmers, when there was much sunshine, drought, they started going for cutting down trees in order to burn charcoal as a source of survival. Because you burn charcoal, maybe 1 sack, 2 sacks, 10 sacks, you sell to people who come from Soroti City in order to get money for educating your children, for all sources of livelihood. And also, we also we also use wetlands to grow paddy rice in order to earn livelihood. But now, since government policies have set a program that people should change themselves from using those resources, that is mismanaging the environment. So we also came in with our initiative to give advice, technical advice, because we had also seen that the wetlands were drying, the forests were also being cut down. There was really total, even the rainfall pattern extended to the worst. So we started advocating to the communities that it is not good to destroy environment. Let us now change our systems, our methods of using environment badly to improve it such that our environment gets better.
Jethro recognized that if communities' fundamental needs were not being met, there was no chance the children were going to be able to attend school. This was the point at which Jethro decided something must be done. He met with community members and World Vision to devise an effective yet realistic, achievable plan. He spent countless hours learning the best ways to plant trees, the most successful restoration methods, and the fastest way to mitigate the damage that has already been done. Fortunately, Jethro is a smart man. He knows that he will not find a solution to Uganda's climate change crisis or charcoal burning complications alone. But Jethro is also aware it is up to people like him to find adaptations to combat the conditions resulting from the climate crisis. After acquiring as much knowledge as possible and planting as many trees as he could, he thought back to his original dreams of teaching. What better way for Jethro of following through on that plan than to teach his community everything he had learned? And his first action was to start at home with his wife and 11 children.
I decided to divide those trees amongst my children too, because I told them that you should be also planting such that as you grow, the trees also grow. As you grow old, the trees grow old, and you'll be more wealthier and healthier than me, because now you have started at the right age. Even now, that is how we dialogue with the communities around us. We are training the young men, the young women, even the elderly to plant trees such that the future generation will have the best.
Jethro figured if he could teach his children, then that's 11 more people who can teach others, and those can continue, and so on and so forth. It was not easy for Jethro to get the people of Morungatuny on board. He faced a number of challenges. Initially, the community was adamantly opposed to restoration efforts. Jethro told us about an old legend in the community that said anyone who walked with or went near tree stumps may be a witch. So he was seen as unlucky to interact with leftover stumps. Primarily, though, people were just unaware that the ultimate reason for many of the hardships the community was experiencing were in direct relation to the lack of trees. For example, climate change was making temperatures exceedingly hot and uncomfortable, resulting in people not wanting to be outside planting trees. And that makes sense. However, trees are needed to combat climate change, even out in those hot temperatures. If you remember, we saw in episodes 1 and 2 how trees can cool down a community, bringing rain and water. Another struggle was a lack of tools. It is difficult enough to plant a tree, but without proper equipment, it can be near impossible. Though World Vision was able to provide tools, it was not enough. and the situation left the people of Morungatuny once again to adapt. Nevertheless, Jethro and the community persisted.
They believe in that when you do something, you must be the first person to taste. But in tree planting, some of these trees can even take about 50 years. So some people fear to plant trees because that they think that it will be his ancestors to benefit. So we also told them that no, because in my secondary education, in geography, we learned about British Columbia, where people can plant a tree which can take about 200 years old. So we used to tell them that do something not for you only, but do something for the better of you and for the better of the generations to come behind you. So you find that now people have also come up, they have started, even old people demand tree growing now as I talk. But the challenge, for us here, we only rely in agricultural farming. So if the weather is not suitable, such a family may realize a very poor harvest. And in the end, you find that they end by suffering famine and even having no money for livelihood.
So the community decided the nature-based solution that was most effective and doable was simply planting and restoring trees that had already been cut. Restoration involves not cutting a stump down any further, as well as treating the surrounding area with extreme caution. Over time, the stump should grow back into a tree. World Vision began their efforts by training a group of 6 people. Now that figure has grown up to 30. The project is now very popular among the community, and everyone has taken note of the benefits. They have even figured out how to burn a special variety of nut to produce charcoal instead of needing to cut down the whole tree. In a perfect world, they will aim for a renewable energy source. But for now, this is an incredible climate change adaptation. The soil has become more fertile, making it easier to plant the trees. Pruning is also a large part of this solution. And remember, nature-based solutions need to have both community and environmental benefits. The reality here is people still need firewood and need to be able to sell firewood. Learning how to prune the tree to obtain some elements without chopping down the entire trees has worked tremendously well. We already mentioned how the lack of trees have always impacted women more than men. In Africa, women are traditionally seen as responsible for food and cooking for the family. And if there's no food, they are blamed. They are blamed. They are blamed by the family. They are blamed by the community. And they are the ones to spend hours of their day in search of firewood. And frankly speaking, they are also the ones facing the brunt of domestic violence. Women often serve as the primary caregiver in their home. So empowering them with education can have a ripple effect. They pass on their knowledge to their family and their communities. So at the end of the day, everyone benefits. It is for those reasons the tree planting initiatives have always thought to include women. World Vision, for instance, made sure that 3 of the 6 people undergoing the initial training were women. Now, as we said earlier, the group is 30. And the proportion has changed, but women still play a crucial role. One of the efforts that has seen remarkable success in the community is a campaign to plant 5 trees for every born child. Women have been at the forefront of this initiative. They told us that if women are to bear the children, the least their husbands can do is plant a few trees so that their children will be equipped with necessity to live. I really love that initiative. We spoke with Aliba Mary, a woman who is seen as a pillar of the community and is a mother of 5. Aliba says she has seen many benefits from the increase in trees already. She says that it is a slow but steady process. It takes an average of 5 years for the trees to develop. Aliba has noticed women thriving more in the community as well. She says her everyday life has become easier with more trees.
They can help me, even for me, I cut them for cooking food when they get it dry. Even for building houses, I can cut them. The leaves, when they fall down, they can make fertilizers.
There's now more shade blocking the sun, so the activities she has to do outside have become more enjoyable. There's also more fruit and nuts for consumption, and perhaps most importantly, the distance she has to travel to collect firewood for cooking has gotten shorter. The women in Aliba's community really look up to her, and she has placed the responsibility of providing education on herself.
Yes, I'm trying to tell them. I'm telling them that it is good for you to plant trees, more trees, because now these days are very difficult. Even the firewood, you will not go and cut somebody's garden, then you will get suffer.
You know, we always appreciate women like Aliba in our community. And I think all of us have one Aliba in our community. Actually, I have one. Aliba has taught many of the women in Morungatuny how to plant and restore trees. I can say that she's a role model. She has even tried to make tree planting be seen as a bonding experience. Aliba has made considerable effort to encourage everyone in her community to get together and plant some trees. She knows the next generations will have to assume the responsibility of planting and restoring even more trees. Aliba shared with us that she's very optimistic in that regard. She says children are the future, and teaching them how to build that future is not only fundamental, but a point of pride for her. She had already noticed the benefit. She knows they will only continue to expand if the whole community is together in their effort to adapt to climate change. In this case, planting trees has been of great importance, and Aliba wants to make every effort to encourage the community to keep planting as many trees as possible. Aliba pointed out that it is all cyclical. With more trees come more resources, the key to success. But she knows it is necessary to plant more than they take, and Aliba wants to make sure her community knows that. In addition to the benefits noticed by Aliba, the community has mentioned slightly improved air quality, especially in areas where there is an abundance of trees. There are also considerably more yields of fruit and nuts. And the good news is nature is coming back. Certain bird species that community members had not seen for years suddenly returned with the trees. Other plant varieties started growing again where people thought they were completely extinct. Can you imagine that? Yes, can you imagine that it happened? And some trees have medicinal properties that can be used to treat snake bite. So the replanting of trees has directly resulted in diseases and infections being treated. And the trees are nourishing not only humans but animals, in particular cows, which then provide milk and meat for human consumption. The soil quality is better, more fertile, and easier to work with. Trees have also cleared up arguments with neighbors. Land borders are often relatively unclear, But with trees providing physical barriers between areas, they are defining land ownership. These clearer borders have resulted in fewer land disputes between neighbors. And of course, the most gratifying part of it is that women in the community mentioned that rate of domestic violence are dropping. Can we clap for Morungatuny? Yeah! The newly planted trees are only providing advantages and more are needed. The efforts are ongoing and realistically, Morungatuny will need continued support. But as the saying goes, it takes a village, and the community is eager to provide for new children. Jethro continues to teach as many people as possible the best methods for tree planting. His greatest wish is for his children to continue to plant trees and teach others all of the knowledge he has passed on to them. He works with World Vision representatives and his community to continue regularly planting trees. And Aliba knows women are the backbone of her community and want to encourage women to get involved as much as possible with tree planting initiatives. Maybe you'll be inspired today. If there was ever a time to plant a tree, the time is right now. Perhaps we should all try Morungatuny's 5 trees for every child solution. After all, the benefits of reforestation are endless and are not just for nature itself, but for the community. The adaptations made by the people of Morungatuny have proven trees are not just part of nature. They are the threads that weave communities together, providing shade, nutrients, shelter, and hope for a better future. This is Nature Answers, rural stories from a changing planet. This is our second to last episode of this season. We hope you really enjoyed traveling with us to Ghana and Uganda, where we had very exciting and incredible stories of how community were involved in adapting with nature. Don't worry, it is not yet finished. We'll be back later this year with some surprise episode, as well as brand new season that we are starting to work on now. It will include more stories from more communities. Until then, share Nature Answers with your friends and family, or send us an email at natureanswers@farmradio.org. We'd love for more people to hear these stories. Nature Answers is produced by Farm Radio International. You can learn more about nature-based solutions and the people implementing them by following Nature Answers wherever you get your podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Farm Radio. Find picture of the people you heard from today on our website at farmradio.org/natureanswers. You also find transcripts and more about nature-based solutions there. Until next time, I'm your host, Martin Mogem, coming to you from Yaoundé, Cameroon.
This episode was written and produced in Uganda by me, Izzy Helenchild, with help from Farm Radio International's office based in Kampala, Uganda. While in Uganda, I was afforded the opportunity to see firsthand how integral practical solutions implemented by local communities are in the fight against climate change. Moreover, how vital women are to this movement. Women are often more impacted by climate disasters. From the dedicated women in Kampala's Farm Radio office to the women in rural communities, their determination is a driving force behind these efforts. I joined as part of an internship program with Carleton University's School of Journalism. It was edited by Tara Sprickeroff. Farm Radio compensated community members who participated in interviews. It is common practice to compensate a person in this region for the time he or she spends being interviewed. Our podcast would exclude many important perspectives if we only interviewed those who could afford to step away from their economic activities without compensation. This podcast was produced thanks to funding from the Government of Canada.